This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube, and today we have a returning guest, very popular person on this channel, former WCW World Champion, former TNA head writer, former WCW head writer, and WWE head writer during the most popular ratings period they had of all time, none other than Vince Russo.
What is going on, Hannibal? How you doing, my friend? Nice to be with you again.
I'm doing great. You already have a hater on here. You are
Yes.
not a pro wrestler. You are just a
Well,
writer.
Michael's right. Michael's right, Hannibal. I was not a pro wrestler. I was a WCW world champion. Big difference between just being a wrestler and a world champion. So he's right.
I've been actually talking to the fans on here about now they have like these Costco guys in AEW who are very niche YouTubers that don't really appeal to like all of the wrestling audience or mainstream. At least when you were world champion, people knew who you were. You were hated, and wrestling people all knew you.
Right. No, exactly, man. Hannibal, I got to tell you something. I watch a lot of what goes on today in wrestling, and I am constantly always saying to myself, God forbid I would have wrote that, or God forbid I would have produced that. They would have absolutely annihilated me. I see that a lot in the product I watch today.
What do you think about the use of these Costco guys as someone that brought entertainment in? I know when you use David Arquette, he was dating Courtney Cox. He was just coming off of the Scream movies. And I think he donated his money to Brian Pillman's family or something. Tony Khan, I think, has actually signed these guys. And it has got some buzz, but it looks like they're going to be full-time wrestlers now.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it, kudos to those guys, man, for their little Costco gimmick. I mean, those guys have made a lot of money. And, they really, their 15 minutes of fame, they really took very, very far, and absolutely good for them. But it's a novelty act, man. It's not going to have legs for the long term. And yeah, man, people could say whatever they want about David Arquette, man. He, when he won the title, he took it to the movie set that Courtney Cox was on, and we had Kurt Russell and we had Kevin Costner with the WCW belt. I mean, we were on the cover of USA Today when there used to be such a thing of newspapers. I mean, I get it. I get Tony Khan trying to tap into the popularity of these guys, but it's only niche and it's only novelty. These guys, 3-6 months from now, it's going to be dead news.
I find it interesting that they have a lot of people that they're paying literally millions and millions to supposedly be stars for that company, but they're sending these guys to the Tonight Show, and they brought them to that big Texas press conference that they had, while other people that supposedly they're paying between $4 and $6 million a year are sitting at home, which is a little unusual.
It's funny. It's funny, Hannibal, because, I am starting to understand more and more as, I do separate myself from the wrestling business. People find it very hard to understand. I am not a fan of the wrestling business. I don't like the wrestling business. This is my job based on my expertise. There are millions and millions and millions of people out there that go to work every single day to a job that's, not their choice, but they know they need to make a living, and there are people that depend on them. And, and I'm no different, but as I sit back and I grow older and I distance myself more and more from the wrestling business, it is starting to become clear to me, bro, there are a lot of marks in the wrestling business. Tony Khan is at the top of that list. Triple H is at the top of that list. I'm talking about marks that are, running these wrestling companies. And, Tony Khan is obviously a mark for these guys. I mean, there's no ends, end ifs and buts about it. He's a mark for these guys. And man, when I was working for these companies, bro, I wasn't a mark. I studied the ratings, minute by minute. Bro, if you drew numbers, you were going to be on the show. Period. End of story. If you didn't bring in numbers, you weren't going to be on the show. So the reality of the situation is the fan base was actually writing the show because they were clearly telling me what they wanted. I gave them what they wanted and I eliminated what they didn't want. Tony Khan is obviously a mark for these Costco guys. So he's paying them God knows what. He's bringing them, on personal appearances and all this stuff. Bro, you can't be a mark in the wrestling business. You can't. You've got to be a professional. You've got to be a businessman, and you've got to make decisions that are best for the company.
Now, I know you're a very nice guy. You're actually one of the nicest people in wrestling, as far as I'm concerned, from the wrestlers I've met. There's a lot of slime balls in wrestling. At least you're honest and reliable. But as far as Tony Khan, when he's letting people go from AEW, he's just not using them for months at a time. When you were booking, would you job people like that out or have them put over talent that would be staying around? What would your philosophy be?
Hannibal, it was real simple. It was real simple. JR was the best talent relations guy I ever worked with. So when JR would hand me that roster, I knew everybody on that roster deserved a spot on the roster. Jim Ross did not play favorites. If you were on that roster in Jim Ross's mind, you deserve to be on that roster. So once that roster is handed over to me, it is now my job to assist every man and woman on that roster to get as over as they possibly could. That was my job, to be there for them and assist them. Now, if somebody didn't warrant being on the roster, they would get cut. Jim Ross would cut them. They would no longer be on the roster, and he would bring in new people. But whosever name was on that roster, my job was to help them get over, no matter who they were.
So if it was someone like this Ricky Starks guy that's just sitting at home for months, you would say to your boss, if it was Tony Khan, well, let's use him. Let's put him on TV right up until his contract is done.
First of all, if your name is on the roster, if you are getting paid, you need to be on TV. If you're not on TV for whatever reason, you probably should not be on the roster. So I could tell you right now, Hannibal, looking at that roster, there are way, 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 way too many people to get them all on TV. I mean, it would be absolutely impossible. We had a manageable roster where I was able to get everybody on television. Nobody was sitting home and getting paid, bro. You were either on TV or you were not with the company.
What would you do as far as Ring of Honor? Because if they gave it to you, would you suggest to tape it a different day or do something about it? Because it seems like throwing the Ring of Honor matches into the tapings really leaves fans with a bad taste in their mouth. They're burnt out by the time these matches play. A lot of them just leave.
Yeah, I would look at Hannibal. I would look at Ring of Honor as a wrestling company, on television, and any time you have on television, that is prime real estate. So if I'm writing Ring of Honor, just to make a comparison, it was the same way I wrote Sunday Night Heat. I wrote Sunday Night Heat like it was Monday Night Raw. If you have that television time, you need to write a show. So like I would start there. Ring of Honor would be just as strong as all my other shows. It wouldn't be a throwaway show for me.
And what do you think about how they used Rampage, even up towards the end? It seemed like once they found out it was being canceled, they just gave up on it. Would you still try and make it a good show right up until the end? And I even noticed at some points, like, They had MJF on Dynamite making fun of Rampage, saying he's never going to be on it. Like, is that a good way of building up a show?
That is terrible, man, because like I said, man, television time is so valuable. I'm not going to speak I'm going to talk me. I didn't waste a second of television time, man. Every minute we had, every second we had was absolutely valuable. There were no throwaway shows. There were no throwaway shows going into, the holidays. There was no throwaway shows, between, November and WrestleMania. Every single show meant something that I wrote. Whether you liked it or not, it's all subjective, but I wrote every single show like it was my last show.
It's funny that now you're almost more of a baby face as far as fans like feel about you, because wrestling has taken such an entertainment turn. So even the ones that were against you, some of them are turning, with people like the guy spinning the pizza while wrestling and some of the more ridiculous stuff out there. What do you think about people's change of heart about you over the years?
Well, it's funny, man, because one thing about me, bro, is I from day one in this business, which started in 1991, I have been 100% honest about everything. And Hannibal, this business. And to be an honest person in a world full of, politicians and snake oil salesmen and carnies and con men, being honest, man, you're not going to get anywhere. And, me being honest, hurt me so much in the wrestling business. But if people believe that, I'm going to actually lie about something that happened in wrestling, it's not, there's nothing important enough in my career or that goes on in wrestling that warrants lying about. So I was very honest. I'm very honest to this day. I'm not affiliated with any wrestling company. I'm not going to go be the GM of NXT or, the day I become associated with a wrestling company, which will never happen, I would have to end my podcast, because I can no longer be subjective and I can no longer be fair if I'm getting a paycheck from, NXT or MLW or whatever. If they're paying me, I'm going to have to put them over. So I think people are starting to understand Vince is always honest. He's telling us the truth. He doesn't want to work for a mainstream wrestling company. And everything he tells us is what he honestly and truly feels. I think people are finally starting to understand that.
And I understand, because I'm kind of in the same boat. Why are you still in the wrestling business as far as podcasting if you don't like it? Well, because it's a way to make money.
Yes.
And here's a question for you. Did you like it when you were in it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it. Guys, I'll be honest with you. My love for wrestling, it started when I was about 12 or 13. So that would have been like 1972, right around that time it started, 1972, 73. Honestly, guys, I lost my love for wrestling when I left the WWE. That's the God honest truth. And I left the WWE in 1999. When I went to WCW and experienced the politics that I experienced in WCW, I lost all of my love for professional wrestling. At that point, it really became a job. The early years of TNA were cool. Once Bischoff and Hogan and Pritchard came into that company, it was the same political bullshit, and that's why I left. It's going to be 13 years now since I left. I don't regret leaving. I don't look back. And as far as today's wrestling product goes, oh my God, bro, I am not a fan of this product at all. They are so far away from what professional wrestling was the business that I grew up loving. It's not the business it is today.
Someone wants to know why you decided to write yourself into the show in WCW, and did you enjoy the acting aspect?
I hated it. I hated being a character, but Hannibal, people need to understand, and after all these years, a lot of people still don't. When you are writing 116 shows a year, more than that if you want to include heat and all that other stuff, when you're writing that many shows a year, you constantly need to throw monkey wrenches in there, because these monkey wrenches enable you to go in different directions you would have never went in before. It allows you to open up the creative envelope. And if you're not opening up the creative envelope, what you're doing is you're just repeating shit over and over and over and over again. That's what the WWE does. And everything is a rehash. They have a playbook, and they got a toolbox, and they have only so many tools in that box, and they're regurgitating it over and over. When Goldberg spears Russo through a cage, and now all of a sudden Russo finds himself the heavyweight champion, or David Arquette pins Eric Bischoff, or Vince McMahon, wins a title. When you do those unexpected things, your creative envelope now opens up, and you can go in all these different directions to create exciting new material. If you don't do things like that, you're going to get the same freaking show every single week. My God, bro, WWE, they drag out these effing angles for months and months and months and months. And bro, that was part of the reason of us, overtaking 83 weeks, because Bischoff beat the NWO into the ground where it didn't mean anything anymore. People got sick of it. They got tired of seeing it. That opened up a little hole for us, and that's when the Attitude Era was created, and that's when we turned the tables. I mean, my God, bro, this Bloodline storyline, wash, rinse, repeat, every single freaking week. I am so bored and I am so tired of it. If I did not get paid to watch these shows, no way in hell would I be watching these shows.
And it's becoming the NWO now with so many of the members.
Yep.
I never liked it to begin with, to be honest. I respect Roman Reigns.
Me too. I'm the same way, Hannibal. You know what it is, bro? Because the bar has been so lowered. The bar is so lowered, so if they come up with anything, oh, that was great, oh, this is the best angle ever. No, bro, the angle is mediocre at best. You lowered the bar, so anytime they do anything, you're going to think it's great.
Yeah, because a lot of the time I tried to watch it, it's like 12 minutes of people just standing in the ring, talking, and nothing happening. They're supposed to not like each other. Why don't they fight?
I'm with you 1,000% on that.
Somebody wants to know whose idea was it to put the WWF title on Mankind?
Well, that would have been, me and Ed, because we were writing at the time. And again, bro, one of the things you don't expect. Now, holy crap, Mick Foley just won the WWF title. Oh, now we have to tune in next week to see what happens. That's how we wrote TV, man.
Here's an interesting question for the UFO fans of this channel. What do you think of this whole drone situation that seems to have blown over at this point?
Yeah, it's real simple, bro. We as Americans are on a need to know basis. They know everything that's going on, and they tell us what they think we need to know. That's why, guys, it is so important, man, to have an open mind, do your own research, go in rabbit holes, read, ask questions, so you could figure out what the hell is going on in your life, rather than people tell you what you're supposed to think and what you're supposed to feel.
And what's your opinion on the UAP phenomenon?
Um, my opinion on that was, I think, what a lot of people's opinions. Well, bro, who knows? Like, who knows? The way to control people is through fear. That's how you control people, through fear. Because what happens, man, when all of a sudden we're afraid of something, when we're afraid of COVID, when we're afraid of UFOs, what do? We put on the news. And then what do they do on the news? They start shaping their agenda of what we're supposed to believe this is and what we're supposed to believe is going on. Bullshit. Have a mind of your own, ask questions, do the research, and make up your own conclusions.
You're, of course, from the New York area. Did any of your family or anyone that you know see any of this stuff that was supposedly going on back in earlier this month?
Yeah, right now I only have a daughter in Brooklyn. I don't have any family in New York anymore, but my daughter in Brooklyn did not see any of this herself. No.
Jeff wants to know about your recent appearance on Piers Morgan.
Yeah, bro, it was, I lost my temper over Phil Mushnick. Phil Mushnick, my history with Phil Mushnick goes back to 1991 when he outright lied about a steroid symposium that the WWE conducted. He was invited to it. He did not go. And the next day in the New York Post, he wrote a story about it filled with fabrications that were untrue. And I never, ever, ever forgot that. So when they put me on that show and they brought him on and he started being smug, he just pushed the wrong buttons, man. And he really, really pissed me off because I knew the truth. I knew he didn't even go to that thing. And I knew in one of the biggest newspapers in the world, he made up a bunch of shit.
And you bring up your daughter. It just came to me that I saw an interview with Jim Cornette where he was telling a story that he came to your house once for a barbecue and he was on a hammock and your kids sprayed him with super soakers and he fell off the hammock. Is that a true story?
That was not my house. That was Bruce Pritchard's house. Yes, Bruce Pritchard had me and my wife over and Jim Cornette over. And yes, that did indeed happen. Yes.
Someone wants to know, what do you think about Buff Bagwell's sobriety?
I'm thrilled, bro, because when I went to WCW, I thought Buff was a great talent, man. He looked great. He had a great personality. He had the gift of gab. He was a good worker. But, man, he had his demons, man, and his demons overtook him. His demons wound up controlling his life. So I am 1000% ecstatic for Buff. I always liked Marcus, bro.
Is there anyone in the wrestling business, and a lot of us have had demons over the years, that you wish you could have done more for, but you kind of put it off or you didn't know the extent of it?
Oh yeah, bro. Well, one of them was Eddie. Bro, a lot of people don't notice, but when I first started WCW and I was looking so forward of working with all those guys in the middle of the card, God, bro, immediately I got a phone call from Eddie. And he just said, Vince, I'm in a really, really bad place. And he said, I need to check myself into rehab. And, first of all, I was so grateful he was acknowledging that. And obviously, that was the only important thing that he get himself, squared away. And I hated the timing of it because I was so looking forward to working with him more.
Someone has a question about Mankind's title win, a follow-up. Was it your choice to put it on a taped episode of Raw rather than live, and why?
Nah, bro, back then it's, WWE was working on a budget, man. Guys, before when the 83 weeks, WWE, man, was not in a good position financially. Before I started writing, bro, they were actually in the red. And, a lot of times, we had to tape shows because they just did not have the budget and the money to go live every single week. So that was done pretty much out of necessity.
Someone's making a bit of a joke here. Was WCW's biggest mistake letting Ronnie Garvin go? What was your opinion of Ronnie Garvin?
Bro, I never got to work with Ronnie Garvin. I mean, what I saw of him on television, I thought he was, a good performer, good wrestler, solid, but I never got to work with Ronnie Garvin.
What did you think about Vince McMahon making himself ECW world champion?
Yeah, bro, I wasn't watching it back then. I didn't actually see that. So it would really be hard for me to comment on something I didn't see, because it just would have been, the story they told and how it was written and how it played out. I didn't get to see any of that.
How do you think this is all going to play out with Vince at this point? Because there seems to be a lot more questions about Janelle Grant's accusations than there was at first. And the story has died down quite a bit. Clearly, there was a lot of settlements over the years, but do you think in the long run this is going to affect him too much, or are we going to see this blow over?
Well, right now, Vince and his legal team are trying desperately to get this back into arbitration. And that's what it really comes down to. Because if this case turns into arbitration, there's going to be a settlement and it's going to be over and we're not going to learn anything. However, if the judge deems that it's not going to go to an arbitration and it is going to go to trial, I think that's going to be bad news for Vince. I think it's going to be bad news for the company. And I think it's going to be bad news for a lot of people involved.
What do you think about the people saying that his documentary on Netflix was the greatest documentary of 2024? I admit I made it through it, and I can't make it through any episodes of wrestling, but I think it was overrated in a lot of ways.
Oh,
personally.
yeah, it absolutely was, Hannibal. But, I got to tell you this, it was pretty accurate. It was pretty fair. But there was nothing in that documentary I don't think anybody didn't already know. So from that perspective, I think it was just a little disappointing to people because, everything they talked about in there had been documented and we knew pretty much everything that was in the doc.
And by watching it, where some people are saying like a regular person could have watched that and found it entertaining, they really did go quite a bit into wrestling stuff at various points that I don't think a non-wrestling fan overall would be able to sit through.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, my wife who watches, we watch a lot of documentaries on Netflix. She wasn't interested in watching that. She's not a wrestling fan. And she just wasn't interested in watching it.
Yeah, particularly when they go into the whole Vince family storyline.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much wrestling. But I will ask you this about that whole Vince family storyline part where Shane is like, he did it all for his dad. You've wrestled, you know the high you get from the fans. Do you think it really was all for Vince, or was there a part of Shane that did this because he also loves doing it?
No, well, bro, he loves doing it. Make no bones about it. But I got to tell you, man, I worked, Hannibal, with 3 cases that were very, very, very similar. Dixie Carter, Shane McMahon, and Jeff Jarrett. All 3 of these people were really driven by getting acceptance from their dads. Their dads were very successful. Their dads were wealthy. Their dads were, icons in their industries. And all 3 of those personalities, man, they were driven by proving something to their dads. No question about that. Those 3 stories, man, are very, very similar.
It seems like the most buzz AEW had of 2024 was the whole Shane McMahon talk when he was like teasing that he might do something with these pictures with Tony Khan that nothing ever happened from, I guess. What do you think that was all about? Was that just to try and get each of them publicity?
I think, bro, I believe, I mean, there's no question, man, that the McMahon family is fractured. No question about that. I would highly doubt that Vince has a relationship with Stephanie and Triple H. Now, I don't know any inside information. I do know the players, and I do know the game, and I do know what I've seen. It would be highly unlikely to me that Vince has a relationship with Stephanie and Triple H, just based on the way the story is laid out. I do believe Vince has a relationship with Shane. And honestly, I think that was all about perhaps Vince dipping his toe in the water to see if AEW may be for sale. And maybe Shane was the front guy, because obviously Vince would have not been able to publicly pursue this. That's what I think was behind that. Just to see where AEW was from a business standpoint. Shane McMahon wasn't going to AEW to work for freaking Tony Khan. Shane McMahon's not going to work for anybody at this point in his life. I think it went much, much deeper than that.
I actually had a New York lawyer tell me the exact same thing, that he believed that is what was going on about Vince McMahon possibly acquiring it, because he's had success acquiring companies in the past more than starting them from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, looking at the way the whole scenario played out, that would be my guess.
Now, you were in the news, I guess, about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, saying that you think Triple H, his time in WWE might be limited. I do believe, I agree with you, that at some point something's going to happen and he's going to get released over it or something. But what exactly were you saying a couple weeks ago when that was all in the news?
Yeah, I listen, Ari Emanuel and The Rock have had a very, very long relationship. I believe, Rock still being one of the top movie stars in the world. I honestly believe that is what is keeping Triple H in his spot. Because if Rock still wasn't a box office success, and Rock still wasn't making, blockbuster movies that were earning a lot of money, and Rock decided, I want to get back into wrestling full time, there is absolutely no need for Triple H. Rock could work directly with Ari Emanuel. I guarantee you Rock has a list of people that he would put in place in key positions. And who knows, man, if Rock's movie career does begin to wane a little bit, who knows if Rock decides, you know what, I'm going to go back and I'm going to run this company. If Rock ever made that decision to become more involved on a daily basis, I don't think there's any need for Triple H at all in that company.
We always hear what a great booker he is, but they actually had several thousand less this year at Madison Square Garden a couple days ago than they had last year, for how hot we keep hearing the company is, and they're eliminating house shows and stuff. What do you think about like the current state of creative? And for instance, also the Saturday night's main event, they were surprised it didn't get a good rating, but it was so predictable. There was not one match on there that wasn't predictable.
Triple H is not a writer. Okay, you this is a television show. SmackDown and Raw are on television show. You need to know how to write a television show. Triple H is not a television writer. He did not go to school for TV writing. He did not learn under, an Ed Ferrara who had written television shows and written movies. He's not a writer. He's a retired wrestler. And let me tell you something, Triple H was a great wrestler. Triple H had a great wrestling career. That doesn't mean he knows how to write a television show. And like I said, man, I watch these shows and all I see are the same angles repeated over and over again and stretched out to nausea. That tells me Triple H is creatively bankrupt. So he either needs to step aside and get some people in there that understand writing and know how to, write a television show and understand wrestling, or else, like I said, bro, 6 hours of the WWE weekly. Do you know how old and boring that is going to get? Yeah, bro, they'll probably be able to ride the wave from now till WrestleMania. They got Cena in their hip pocket. They'll probably bring The Rock back. Logan Paul's making a comeback. Yeah, they'll pull every rabbit out of that hat as soon as WrestleMania is over, bro, and that tank is empty. Good luck with 6 hours of TV every week.
What did you think, speaking of rabbits out of the hat, bringing Jesse Ventura back?
Bro, I think that was the only bright spot of freaking Saturday night's main event, man, because it was a house show. I mean that's all it was. And what a huge opportunity, prime time, NBC. And that was just another wrestling show. There was nothing special about that show outside of Jesse Ventura.
And it's funny, I know people think I have it personal against Kevin Owens, but for that main event, nobody thought Kevin was going to win. And if you want the old school fans back, for people like me that watched it during Saturday night's main event, the larger than life characters, he's like one of the least larger than life characters that they have on the roster to put into a feature match. So I don't know why they didn't use Roman Reigns or CM Punk or bigger names.
I have no idea. And Hannibal, listen, man, you're a little younger than me, but I know you remember stuff. Bro, do you remember Saturday? I believe it was Saturday night's main event. Do you remember when The Undertaker upset Hulk Hogan, won the title, and then immediately the WWE did Tuesday Night in Texas? Remember that, bro? They did that. Yeah, they did the special pay-per-view and they put the title back on Hogan. Bro, they should have freaking put the title on Saturday night's main event on freaking Kevin Owens, because like you said, nobody thought Kevin Owens was going to win the match. Bro, you don't ever think Kevin Owens is going to win a big match, and that's because of the way that they booked him. But if he would have shocked the world and did something heelish to win that title, and then, bro, either bring it back at the Royal Rumble or either do a Tuesday night in Texas. But like you said, bro, just so freaking predictable, everything they do.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I'm not even a fan of him as a wrestler, but at least that would have had people talking and buzzing about it. That's 100%. That would have been a great idea. That's why we need minds like you back in wrestling, but it's not going to happen, sadly.
No.
Vampiro, he got an upset win over Hulk Hogan. I think it was during your era. Someone wants to know what it was like working with Vampiro.
I wouldn't say difficult to work with, bro, because Vampiro was a unique individual. And bro, when I talk about unique individuals, they don't think like everybody else. It's funny, man, because I'm sitting here, I'm talking about Vampiro, and I'm thinking of the Ultimate Warrior. These guys were just special people. They didn't think like your average wrestler. And bro, on top of that, very intelligent people. And in wrestling, when you know somebody is more intelligent than you and you know they're smarter than you, then how do you label them? Oh, they're hard to work with. That's a wrestling thing, man. That is bullshit. Vampiro was just a very, very unique individual. Raven was the same way, same exact way. These are people that were just special and didn't think like everybody else.
How was Macho Man's girlfriend, Gorgeous George, to work with?
Man, I'll be honest with you, bro. I didn't get to work with her much when I was there, but I did get to know her like afterwards, like later on in my career. And man, she was always very, very good to me. Very nice. She was a sweetheart of a girl. But I never really got to work with her because when I went to WCW, Savage was on the way out because of whatever contractual discussions were going out. I did not get to work with him much at WCW.
And she ended up with one of Vampiro's misfit friends.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Did she?
I think they ended up getting married.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, she was Stephanie, right? That's her name.
Yeah, Stephanie Ballard, I think.
Yeah, she was always very nice to me.
Violent J recently did an interview with you. What was your relationship with bringing Insane Clown Posse into both WWE and then I guess they were already in WCW when you took
bro, I love those dudes. I mean, I really did. They were just funny. And they were talented and they didn't mind bumping their asses off. They if anything, bro, they were, undependable at times. But I was always a fan of those guys, man. I thought they were great characters and very, very, very entertaining.
Now, I did hear him tell a story that the Headbangers roughed them up during Raw, and I watched it. And at one point, one of them's holding their hands back, and he takes a full-fledged steel chair to their head. And I guess the Headbangers said WWE kind of orchestrated that, but Violent J didn't believe it. Do you recall anything about that from that time?
I recall because I review the Attitude Era on russosbrand.com, and I recall seeing that. Listen, man, Hannibal, I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but see, people don't want to believe shit like this happens in wrestling. They don't want to believe it. Bro, you remember Ronnie and Donnie Harris?
Oh, yeah, they're friends of yours, right?
Yeah, bro, they left the wrestling business because they got orders to put a hit on the Legion of Doom. They were told to get in the ring and beat the shit out of these guys. And Ronnie and Donnie said, we're not going to do that. They're our friends. We're not doing that. And they were let go from the company. So do I believe that a hit was put out on ICP? Absolutely, 1,000%. Because those guys, the Headbangers, bro, they wouldn't have done that on their own. They wouldn't have done that unless they were told to do that and were afraid of losing their jobs if they didn't. So I believe that 1,000%.
What was the reason behind that? Were they just fed, or for WWE saying that, was it because they were just fed up with Hawk at that point?
No, bro, you got to understand, Hannibal, when I got in the ring, bro, very early on, I had a cage match with Ric Flair in Atlanta. Bro, I got concussed in that match, and I got concussed pretty badly. And bro, I continued to work. And this must have happened to me at least 3 times, where the person I was working with, I would say, bro, I'm concussed. Just stay away from my head. Do whatever you want to do. Stay away from my head. And bro, they came directly for my head. I remember an instance with Jeff Jarrett where we were having a creative meeting at his house, and I was just talking about, bro, like we need to make things look more snug, because a lot of the stuff on TNA, bro, it just looked like bad, phony wrestling. So I said to Jeff, bro, the work needs to be more snug. Bro, About a week later, I had a match with Jeff, who was my friend. Bro, he beat the living shit out of me as a shoot. Beat the living shit out of me. My hands were tied over my head, and he beat the shit out of me with a steel chair. That is the wrestler's way of telling you, oh, you think you're a wrestler? You want to be a wrestler? We're going to show you what it is to be a wrestler. It's like, now you're coming into their world. And if you're not a bona fide wrestler, then, it is their duty to teach you what wrestling was all about. Bro, that still happens to this day. We saw Lana go through a table for how many weeks? That still happens to this day.
Didn't it happen with David Penzer and Kurt Angle in TNA too, where Penzer took a legitimate beating?
I don't know about. I don't know about that.
May not have been during your time, but
yeah.
He told me he got a concussion. They had Kurt Angle beat him up in the ring.
Yeah, well, whatchamacallit tells me, I do a lot of work with Jonathan Coachman. He told me the story. They legitimately put a hit on him that he knew nothing about. He was sitting at the gorilla position. He wound up missing an overseas tour because his wife was pregnant. So he missed one overseas tour. He's at the announce position. They're at the end of the show. Vince tells him to get in the ring on headsets. He didn't know any of this was coming. And one by one, Batista, Taker, they came down and they hit Coach with their finish one by one. Taker even apologized to Coachman before he did it. That they were ordered to do that because how dare you miss an overseas tour because your wife's pregnant? How dare you?
And of course, it happened during your era too with Public Enemy and the Acolytes.
Right.
Do you know the backstory of that?
I don't really know the backstory, but I know the story.
What's the story on it?
Well, I mean, just to throw, I know those guys were unliked, and I know they were questioning things, and just the fact, bro, that they were outsiders and they came in from ECW, there's gonna be a beating. I mean, there's just gonna be a beating, bro. You see it a lot of times. You'll see it in the ring, and okay, bro, something's going on here.
Yeah, it even happened with Hardcore Holly beating up Rene Dupree in recent years.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
Someone wants to know your top 5 toughest wrestlers.
Wow, that's tough. Oh man, I'd say Haku, I'd say Holly, I'd say Blackman, I'd say Shamrock. And maybe, again, Severn, but, a lot of those guys were UFC fighters, bro. But those would be the 5 that come to mind immediately.
Severn didn't really get a good push there. Was that having to do with charisma? Or he was telling me he had a contract, too, that still allowed him to do outside stuff. Would that have held him back, too, as far as Vince and Jim Ross wanting to give him?
Hannibal, I think what really held him back, to be honest with you, was he was there the same time Shamrock was. And Shamrock was really, really, really good. Bro, I say to this day, Ken Shamrock was the most believable wrestler I ever saw. To this day. I go back and, like I say, I watch Attitude Era shows. You believe everything Shamrock is doing is real. And on top of that, he was great on the freaking mic. So that really hurt Severn because he was not good on the microphone. And maybe if he was there a different time than Shamrock was, it would have made a difference. But yeah, bro, he just lacked the personality and a charisma that a Ken Shamrock did.
Severn insists that angle that you guys did where Owen Hart spiked him with the pile driver was a shoot where he actually ended up getting a bit hurt out of it, even though it was supposed to be a work. Do you know anything about that angle? Like if he actually got hurt or not, or if he's just still working the angle?
Yeah, bro, I just saw that a couple of months ago, and I forgot completely about it, bro. I forgot it. So I don't know. I don't know what was behind that angle. I honestly don't. I don't know if it was legit. I don't know if he was working it, because I watched it, bro, and I didn't have any recall of that at all. So I don't know. Bro, I'm not. That's the thing about me, bro. If I don't know something, I'm going to tell you I don't know something. You got people in wrestling that love to tell stories and love to make shit up. I don't do that. If I don't remember something, I'm going to tell you I don't remember.
Someone is asking, when you guys used to use the Howard Stern show cast, how would you go about booking them?
You know, it's funny. That's a good question, because a lot of wrestlers were booked there after I left. But I do remember, Kurt Angle went on the show while I was still there. I remember that appearance. That's a good question, bro. I would think, knowing the Stern show and knowing our company, somebody at the Stern show would have to pitch somebody to Howard. Howard would probably have to give his approval, and then they probably contacted the office. I don't think we were contacting the Stern show.
Someone wants to know, and I don't know if you remember this, why was Savio Vega in and out of TNA so quickly as the coach of the Knockouts?
Honestly, bro, I do not know. A lot of stuff. Hannibal, when I came into these companies, people don't really understand what my role was. I was a writer and a producer. I was head writer and head producer. I did not get involved with contracts. I didn't know what people's contracts were. I didn't know what people got paid. If there was a problem with the office, I didn't know about it. The only thing I would be told is like a Vince McMahon would say to me, hey, Vince, maybe we need to back off of so-and-so. And I would never ask any questions, bro. But when he told me that, I knew, okay, bro, they're having a problem with this person. They're probably going to let that person go. But people like to believe I was more involved in that stuff than I was. I wasn't, man. I was the head writer and the head producer. I didn't get involved in those things.
Do you think it's possible for the Attitude Era to come back, or has the world changed too much that would just be too controversial at this point?
Nah, bro, it could definitely come back. Bro, we're watching mamby-pamby wrestling, Judgment Day, the heel group. They're hanging out in the clubhouse playing video games. Give me a freaking break. Even when the WWE went to PG, bro, they were nowhere near the PG line. Nowhere near it. There was so much more they could have done with a PG rating, but they choose not to. Even the USA Network, bro, I was consulting for the USA Network a couple of years ago. Even they wanted the show to be more edgy. They wanted it. The network wanted it to be more edgy. But, the WWE with their politically correct bullshit. First of all, bro, wrestling can't be politically correct. Okay, wrestling is built on people fighting, people with beefs, people with differences, testosterone, violence. That's what wrestling is built on. You cannot make that product politically correct.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be an escape from reality, and now it just seems like it's very woke, for lack of a better word, and it's more politically correct than ever, sadly.
Absolutely. I agree with you 1,000%, man.
Do you think Netflix is going to be a benefit overall to WWE?
Bro, I really don't. And it's, first of all, the content's not going to change. You got the same people writing the show. It doesn't matter if it's on Netflix, USA, Fox. It doesn't matter. They're not writers. Okay, Triple H does not know how to write Attitude Era television. He does not know. So it's not going to change. However, my concern would be, bro, you got you got a large fan base that have been more or less watching that show for free, even though it's not free, bro. It's part of your cable plan, technically. But to them, it's free. To them, they've been watching it for free. Now, after 25 years, however long Raw's been on, now you're going to ask people to start paying for something they were getting for free, and you're asking them to pay for something that, quite frankly, really isn't that good. I think that's going to hurt them more than help them.
And I think too, like the only times I watch it, unless I'm searching for something that happened on YouTube that everyone's telling me to watch, is if it's on in the gym or a restaurant and I happen to be glazing at it. If it's on Netflix, they don't usually play the Netflix on at bars or restaurants.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that. That is a great point. Great point.
Now, I don't know much about this, but someone's given us a small tip here. You worked with Moolah, these sex trafficking allegations.
I have no idea about that. That was way before my time. All I could say is I loved working with Moolah. I mean, she was always great to me. I mean, that was way before my time. I wouldn't know.
Could the Harris brothers even have beat up the Road
Warriors?
Oh,
yeah, bro. Yes, bro. The Harris brothers used to walk into bars and start fights with freaking 20 biker gang members. Yeah, bro, the Harris brothers would F you up. Absolutely. They would have won that fight. I love Animal and Hawk. The Harris brothers are the real deal.
And they were younger and bigger at that time, I believe.
Yeah,
too.
They were the real deal.
Who would win between Brock Lesnar and Meng, in your opinion, in a real fight?
Wow, that's a good question, man. You know, I don't know, bro. I mean, because I never saw Meng really going at it. So I never saw Meng mad. You know, obviously we saw Brock go at it at UFC. I never got to see Meng as a shoot, so it would be hard for me to say.
Last question here for TNA. It seems like they're cutting people's pay. A lot of people are leaving. What would you do to like try and boost TNA at this point, or is it just kind of a lost cause? I know they brought in Tessa Blanchard, which got them some buzz, but it appears they're having some financial peril.
Yeah, bro, it's just you've got to make everybody on that roster a star. You know, you've got to, bro. Here's the problem with WWE, TNA, AEW. You got to decide who are the people we're going with. Who's the roster? Who are the people that are going to be on TV? And that's who you go with. You don't have Hannibal, you're in the business. You know this. You're never going to get anybody over unless they are exposed on television every single week. So you can't have them on TV. Then they miss 3 weeks. Then they come back. Then they miss 2. You have to be on television and represented every week. So you got to know this is the team we're putting on the field, and you need to get every person on that team over.
Very good points, and I agree with you. And I agree with you fully for AEW. Like, they don't seem to have a team. You'll see a guy and then he won't appear for 6 weeks.
Yep.
And you don't even know who's still signed or who it, like, when was the last time they used Miro?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're never gonna get people over stopping and starting. You're never gonna get them over that way.
So where can people follow you these days and keep up with your podcasts?
Yeah, guys, right now we're running a little special, man. If you've never been a member of my Patreon, you can go there right now and get a free week, because we want you to try it and sample it, because we know we'll hook you to it. So just go to patreon.com/Russo TWC. Get a free week, bro. It'll cost you absolutely nothing. I got a bunch of great people on there, from Stevie Richards, Stevie Ray of Harlem Heat, Disco Inferno, EC3, Al Snow, Ben Hameen. There's a lot of great people on the channel. So just get your free week. Try it out. See if you'll like it. Patreon.com/Russo TWC.
Very good. Well, I always appreciate hearing your knowledge. You're definitely underrated as far as your knowledge of wrestling, and you're one of the few guys that could actually make a difference now. But sadly, because of politics and also your willingness to do it, I'm sure you need a hell of a lot of money. I don't think it's going to happen. But I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to tell the fans.
Yeah, guys, listen, I say this all the time, guys, and this is what really irks me more than anything about today's business. Bro, whether you liked my writing or didn't like my writing, it's all subjective. You may hate something that somebody else loved. You may love something that somebody else hated. That's fine with me, bro. Like I said, when you're writing 16 shows a year, you're not going to like everything. But one thing I will say, and if you love the wrestling business the way I did, bro, nobody worked harder than I did. Every wrestling show I wrote, no matter what company I worked for, I always wanted it to be better than the last show. I never phoned anything in. I never stretched out angles. I never did, Raw a couple of weeks ago had 3 matches in one show and everything was dragged out. Nobody in the history of the business did a better job writing a television show than I did. You know why? Because I cared. Because as a wrestling fan, I wanted you to get the best experience possible. Period. End of story.